In an age where words flicker into sight and vanish without a sound, it's easy to forget that writing was once a physical art, carved, pressed, and shaped by hand. Each mark was meaningful, each material part of the message. Here at the University of London, a new exhibition seeks to preserve that tradition, offering a rare glimpse into thousands of years of human creativity. I'm Jade Cuttle, a poet, journalist, and BBC New Generation thinker, and I've curated a new exhibition at the Museum of Writing. Here, it's not just ink on a page, or increasingly, in this digital age, pixels on a screen. The history of writing is a lot more colourful and far less black and white than it might seem. In this documentary, I go behind the scenes to find those who are working to preserve this history, to understand what these marks reveal, and what we risk to lose. The Museum of Writing is a rare and unusual collection of artefacts that reflects the culture and history of writing from around 3000 BCE to 2010. Part of the Institute of English Studies here at the University of London, it brings together objects from across the world, tracing how writing materials and scripts have evolved over time. But it didn't start with an institution. It began with one man.
I'm Alan Cole, just Alan. For the past 20 years, I've lectured in paleography here at the University of London. Before that, I spent 47 years in a French bank.
So it's an interesting move from a French bank to a museum of writing. Could you tell us a little bit more about that transition?
I was always first or top in what we call the humanities now, in English, geography, history. And when I left school with a few GCSEs, the teacher said to me, "Alan, it doesn't matter how clever you are, you won't get anywhere in life if people can't read your writing." So for the next few months, I was looking for a job and spent a lot of time at the British Library looking at the letters of these famous people who had done so well for themselves. And I realised that they wrote no more legibly than I did, in fact, even more illegibly, and obviously teachers knew nothing. Spark was ignited, and with my first salary from the French bank, I bought a Parker 51 fountain pen. The following week, I was walking past a junk shop and I saw a letter in the window which purported to be written by Charles Dickens' secretary. I bought it for 5 shillings or 25p in modern coinage, and it turned out to be written by Dickens himself. So I reckon I made a bargain there.
So I've heard you found some of the items had been thrown away in skips outside the British Museum, for example. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I was working in the bank and I suddenly got a phone call from a friend, Philip Poole, and who was the master collection of pen nibs, and he said, "Alan, meet me with some carrier bags at the British Museum." So I made some excuse, skipped off work at lunchtime, and met Philip outside the British Museum in the forecourt, and he said, "Come on, we're going to fill those bags up." I looked a bit, what do you want about? Anyway, we went to these skips and we picked out about a dozen carrier bags full of items related to writing, because they were at the time of no interest, which was universal. In fact, I had started collecting by then, but there are only a handful of people worldwide who were interested at the time in anything to do with writing.
What about the RAF? Because that was a big part of your life. How did that play into collecting?
Well, I was called up, obviously at 19, as every fit young man was. And after time, I had a test with all these beeps and noises, which turned out to be Morse. I happened to pass it and became in the signals. One day during PT class, an officer came in and said, "I'm looking for volunteers, mind you, for Christmas Island." And immediately I thought, Christmas Island, Pacific, and stepped forward, and without thought of what happened there, but I stepped forward, and short time later, I was on a plane flying westwards via Hawaii to Christmas Island. In India, I picked up some Tibetan manuscripts, again from a junk shop next to nothing, because the RAF didn't exactly pay a fortune. So everything was on the cheap. And we stopped in Greece, in Akrotiri, and I got not an early, but a medieval Greek manuscript. Again, wasn't really interested. I got that for a song.
In this exhibition, objects aren't organised by time, but by material, because writing isn't just textual, it's tactile. Every surface changes how we write and how we remember. Dr. Cynthia Johnston, a senior lecturer at the Institute of English Studies, joined us to talk about the collection.
I've used these objects in sort of a variety of ways in my teaching, and it's been an extraordinary privilege to do that. I'm a book historian, I'm a medievalist, and one of the courses that I teach is History of the Book in the Ancient World. And I also teach courses on the history of book collecting. So to be able to give students of the history of the book the opportunity to see things out of glass, beyond the glass, is amazing. I find that often in exhibitions, you go to the British Library or wherever books are being displayed, the books sort of die underneath the glass. And it's, they're objects that are designed technically to be held in the hand for the most part, handled, observed, manipulated. So in the confines of the classroom, working with this material is just extraordinary. There's something also incredibly visceral about working with something like cuneiform. Has an incredible weight to it. And for a student to hold something in their hand that was created in 2000 BCE is just quite remarkable. And there's a visceral connection, I think, with the maker of this object and with the person who's holding it in their hand. So cuneiform is one of, if not the sort of most ancient method of recording. First, it started out as a way to record information, mostly accounting. And this one is wonderful in that you can see it's a grid, and one side of the grid is blank, prepared to receive information, and the other side actually already has information on it. So it's beautiful to hold. It's so thrilling. It's a real connection with the past. This is another type of cuneiform. This is a cuneiform tablet, and it has an envelope. So in ancient sort of accounting and storage, cuneiform, the information would be recorded on one clay tablet, and then it would be stored in a clay envelope. And that envelope would also have on it the identifying information, so you knew what was in your envelope. So cuneiform simply is made from clay. It's incised with a stylus when it's damp, and the symbols indicate amounts, and then cuneiform evolves into an alphabetic system.
These objects are carefully preserved, catalogued and studied before they ever reach display. At the forefront of that work is librarian Tansy Barton.
So we're now in the tower of Senate House, which was purpose-built as part of the construction of the building in the 1930s to house the library's collections. Today the library includes over 2 million books and 50 named special collections, and the tower continues to house a large proportion of that collection, as well as the Museum of Writing collection, which is kept in a cage on this floor. There's around 200 boxes in the collection and over 100,000 individual items, and this might range from a cuneiform tablet right down to several thousand individual pen nibs and pens and pencils, which are part of the collection. Objects are a little bit different within a library context and have to be dealt with in a slightly different way or adapted to fit within our systems of cataloguing and recording that we use for books and documents. I'm now going to fetch an item from the collection. The boxes are arranged by bay, shelf and then box number. This box here, which I'm going to fetch from, is bay 1, shelf B, box 1. So this box from the collection contains material mostly from ancient Egypt. And when we're fetching an item or retrieving an item from the collection, we will find the box we're looking for, find the particular object we're looking for. So for example, a wooden shabti from ancient Egypt. We complete a fetch slip with the details of the item and the location. This is in 2 parts, so one part stays in the box to indicate that an item has been removed, and one item stays with the object when it's taken down to the reading room. The box then goes back into the store, and the store is locked up once we've finished fetching.
Tansy isn't the only one involved in caring for the museum's collection. I also spoke with some other members of staff whose research has helped uncover the stories behind each object.
Right, my name is Simon Elliott. I'm Professor Emeritus of the History of the Book here in the University of London.
So what's your relationship to the Museum of Writing? How did you get involved?
I'm afraid as a historian, I'm going to take you back about 40 years. It seems an extraordinary idea, but I think I'm going to try and explain the richer context in which the MOI exists. It was in 1985 that I attended a conference in Oxford. It was run by the great historian Asa Briggs, the historian of the BBC, and Tim Ricks, who was then CEO of Longmans, which was at that time the oldest surviving publisher in the country. It was a very stimulating and exciting conference, and out of it came the idea that we really ought to have a modest organisation in this country concerned with not just books, but the way that books get created and distributed. So we created the British Book Trade History Group. For around the same time, well, actually in the early 1990s, I had convinced the Open University, and I worked at the Open University for quite a time, that they really ought to set up a modest archive devoted to book history and related items. And I managed to take over a squash court in the London regional office of the Open University. And Tim was marvellous in being instrumental in getting contacts and providing me with links. And we acquired the Sampson Low archives. We acquired the Pen and Sword Books archive that was run by Leo Cooper, the husband of Julie Cooper. And just simply providing storage space, we got the Museum of Writing as well. By 2005, I had actually become Professor of History of the Book here. And within 2 years, we'd launched the London Rare Book School. I was extremely keen to offer a course on the book in the ancient world. And by 2008, 2009, we were doing that. And you can immediately appreciate the marvelous thing was we had this astonishing collection. So when a lecturer talked about a papyrus roll, we could show the students. When they talked about wax tablets, we could not only show them an example of wax tablet, we could offer them the chance to use the real Roman style to write on a modern wax tablet. I think Alan had always wanted a physical museum displaying a lot of the material. That was just impractical, certainly in London. There were no sorts of display spaces that we could possibly afford. But we thought, well, what if we created a virtual museum on the web? And that was catalogued and it was photographed, and we started to build a virtual museum, helped by King's College London, who provided the software and the guidance and so on. So for the subsequent years, and been a long number of years, we've been working slowly and steadily to increase the size and the usefulness of the Virtual Museum of Writing. After my retirement in 2012, it was difficult to find someone to take on, as it were, the initiative. And therefore I was delighted when the museum was taken over by Senate House Library. It had been stored, after being in my room for a time, on the 18th floor of Senate House Library. Again, a very generous gesture on part of Senate House Library, but it was delightful. Well, the organisation storing it became the organisation that owned it as another part of the university.
How do you feel about the increased interest around this collection? And what's the educational potential going forward?
I do think one of the things that we introduced when we had Book in the Ancient World, and indeed 1 or 2 other courses that used the material here, was the chance for students and people generally to have a go. You know, it's all very well saying you are lucky, you know, it took ages. You've got to prove it. You've got to show people. And they've actually got to confront the real material. So I would like to just get them to, as it were, confront the past again. Museums are magnificent, but museums need to extend so they can actually give people a taste of what those objects are actually telling them.
And for the people coming to this exhibition, are there any hopes you have for the visitor experience, what they'll learn or leave with?
I think one thing I hope they're going to take away is what incredibly hard work it was before computers and iPads and all that sort of material and digital television. Writing took time, it took effort, and you know, if you had a limited amount of space on your expensive paper, what you left out and what you included was an editorial exercise. All this had to be done. You had to have a steady and secure surface. Imagine the problems of writing on a train when what you've got is a bottle of ink and a dip pen. So in some ways, I would hope that those looking at the museum would be fascinated, intrigued, delighted, but also said, my God, how lucky we are. And how little we have to spend to get the pleasure we want from books or from writing. That's such a transformation. It's happened so quickly that we need to be reminded.
So thank you for coming, Karen. If you could just introduce yourself and your role at the library.
Okay, my name is Dr. Karen Attar and I'm the curator of rare books and university art. So most of my role is looking after the rare books and special collections here at Senate House Library.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Museum of Writing?
The Museum of Writing, it's really artefacts that support the rest of the material in the library. The Museum of Writing starts much earlier than anything else we have, and really it's behind the collections in that our other collections are examples of the written or the printed word. I've concentrated very much on the printed word because that's my remit, but we do also have plenty of manuscripts here. whereas the Museum of Writing is the material that's used to produce the rest of the library materials.
You have a lot of experience in putting on exhibitions here at Senate House Library. Could you tell us a bit more about that process of crafting the exhibition that the visitors will engage with and what you hope that they'll take away?
Usually you want a story. You want some kind of narrative that will take people through the exhibition instead of isolated objects. You want to be able to summarise the exhibition in about 3 strap lines, which you're trying to convey to your audience. What that particular message is going to be will depend a lot on the collection. I feel with the Museum of Writing that a lot of it is making connections with the past.
Any hopes for the future of this Museum of Writing? Are you hoping it'll continue to grow and reach more people?
It's a rich collection, and we've barely started to do anything with it as yet. It's not the only collection with which we've barely started to do anything. But with all of these, they're so exciting, and we want to know so that we can share. Libraries are not, and museums are not around for the sake of the curators. They're around for us to make knowledge available to everyone else. I think the Museum of Writing can probably do it in a very creative way, and also that it can probably attract younger age groups than we would do for a lot of our material. And make them realise also how lucky they are to be able to write with pen and paper after you've tried giving them, bird's feathers and trying to get them to do something in wax.
After months of research, it's time to move into the exhibition space, where the conservators are finalising the public display.
Today is the opening day of our first exhibition of items from the Museum of Writing since the collection became part of Senate House Library's collections. It's a very exciting day because we get a chance to showcase the collection to our library users and to the public more generally, and bring attention to the riches of the objects in the collection. What's really exciting, I think, about this particular display is the way it showcases a real range of materials that people use for writing over a long period of time. The different surfaces and canvases connecting to natural materials and into the 20th century, perhaps less natural materials, to use as a medium for writing. Going forward, what we hope to achieve with the collection is make it available to as a wider range of researchers as possible. Exhibitions such as this are also really important for making people aware of the existence of the collection in the first place, and open it up to a wide range of audiences to come and discover the unique objects in the collection and the really intriguing and exciting history of how people wrote and what they used to do it.
So I'm Megan Whiteley. I'm the manuscript conservation intern here. I've been here for 9 months now out of the year-long time that I'm going to be here.
That's so interesting, because obviously we've got a concertina book that you've just helped to install. Like, what were some of the things going through your mind when you was installing this very fragile concertina book made of bark and bone? Like, what was in your mind in terms of being careful with the installation? And
well, I think you've just answered the 2 key things, which is it's bark and bone. So, as you said, really fragile materials. And so the main thing was making sure that we didn't extend the concertina too much so that the bark snapped, but also making sure it was open enough that people can see it and appreciate the really beautiful text inside, and also the gorgeous carvings in the bone. Things like temperature control and light control, we have monitors, not actually in this exhibition because it's only on display for a short period of time, but for the big exhibition that we do have light and temperature monitors, so that just gives us an idea of the general exposures that the objects are getting. This is quite an unusual collection of material, obviously, so we've not done so much to support it in the same ways. It's mostly been looking at the objects and moving the objects, and if it doesn't want to move, we don't force it. I think it's great that we've got some stuff on display that isn't books, which is what we usually have on display, and I think that's really going to make people curious about it and want to come over and see what is in here.
When I started the collection at 15, and gave it the rather pretentious title of the Museum of Writing with 3 objects, I'd actually designed a museum and laid it all out, designed it, with me as director, of course. And that, at the back of my mind, there's always been the hope that there would be a museum. I think that at the last count, there are about 113,000 items altogether, if you count every bit of paper and vellum and pen nib. But I would like it to be as well known as it was, to be accepted for what it is, and be an object of education, which was, again, at a young age, was my intention.
And say in 20 years' time, when handwriting disappears, for example, how would you feel about that?
I reckon for the next 20, 25 years, there'll be some form of physical writing, but after that, yeah, it will fade away. It has to, unfortunately. It's progress. Personally, I do write letters still when I can, but it is, let's be honest, it's far quicker to use a computer, to use a keyboard. But I do feel, quite honestly, a bit guilty doing it. I'd much rather use a pen and see what I'm doing. Although it's far more convenient using a keyboard. But yeah, I'm still living in the age of the pen.
If you wish to visit or support the Museum of Writing, you can visit the website for more information.